Hello, my name is Rajit Hathatuyagama. I'm the founder of Magellan Digital, a boutique AI startup. We focus on building apps that uses AI and machine learning. So today I'm going to talk about how we had an idea for helping candidates for job interviews, for how we had that idea and how we made that idea a reality. So what's the problem? The problem is there are a lot of good candidates out there, a lot of good workers out there who can't get a job. And not everyone interviews really well. So we want to give candidates a tool to help them practice for interviews in the comfort of their own home. So basically, you will be asked a question and you can have a conversation, record yourself and see how you sound like. So our solution was Interview Trainer, a personalized interview tool that prepares you for your dream job. So what's the functionality? So the user will select a job, job title, specific job or generic questions they want to interview for, and the conversation AI will ask them a question, and then it'll record your video, converts your speech to text, and gives you some analysis. So what are the requirements we had? So we had a lot of a shopping list of requirements. But one of the most important ones I had was want to be able to build the application really quickly and also make it easy for developers write less code, but at the same time have the security and the scalability. So about 2 years ago, it was called Mobile Hub. Before, we used Amplify to build our app or start our journey. Amplify is a tool that creates backend resources or automates the creation of backend resources and some of the front-end resources you need to talk to the backend. So we use a command line interface which asks a series of questions. You give answers. So for example, whether you want authentication, whether you want storage, whether you want type of databases you want, you answer those questions and it will create a package which will provision all the backend resources for you. Great. Obviously, it's a lot more complicated than that. You really need to understand your data model and what you're really building to actually use Amplify. However, it makes that process really, really simple, especially the plumbing that needs to go from an API gateway to your database, back and forth. It's all done for you. So the command line interface in Amplify, once you do create the package and provisions it, it also creates two files for your front-end code. So in our case, we were using Xcode from Create Our iOS project. And it creates a file that has all the configuration details that can talk to the backend, as well as all the functions that required to talk to the backend, which is really great. So you don't have to write the get user data function from scratch. It's all created for you. You just have to call the functions, including the variables and everything. So it's really, really helpful that way. So our process was to build the data model. So what does it have in an interview, your user, data, all those things. We build that data model and we give it to Amplify to provision all the backend resources. So our workflow is that the moment we have a database update, we change the schema, the API schema, which enables us to put that file into Amplify CLI and provisions the backend. So which means that if we are updating a data model, it'll update the API to call that function. It also updates the database and other services that are part of it. So we go through our iterations through that. When we're going through our sprints, it's easy to make those changes and automate those changes. So what's our roadmap? So 2008, we started when it was a mobile hub and we built our MVP in 6 weeks. And what we did was we actually put in front of users. So it's really important, whatever you build, to get users to log in and test it out. So we ran some focus groups involving a number of universities. So we thought this would be a really good tool for university students who are leaving leaving university and looking for a job. So we thought we'll test it out there. So it was really, really good. And getting that feedback helped us to build the next version, or figure out what are the most important features of that next version, or version 1 we're building. So when you put in front of users, the thing we realized is what candidates want is the ability to practice for a question, say something like, tell me about yourself, or tell me about this experience in the context of that question, and record that video, and so they can actually see for themselves how they're coming across as. And that's that whole practice bit, and getting self-reflection is really important. That's what we found out. And also we also found out, and it is very tough to go through interviews, so it's a very challenging I guess a situation, and a very stressful situation. So we had to build some really encouraging components within our app and make the UI look beautiful, just to help through that process. So that's all we learned through the focus groups. And then we built our app version 1 in 6 months. We launched to AppStore. Now we are testing markets and tested different models, and going through looking at what are the next phases. So when we launched it last August, we didn't have any marketing associated with that, but there's 2,000 downloads. It's a number one search, the 1 or 2 search when you search for job interview, or the phrases like that. And surprisingly, a lot of people from from US, United States, are downloading, which is really interesting, because we haven't really marketed it there. Now, let's have a look at the app.
Tell me about a time when you had to multitask.
I was doing a number of projects at the same time, writing a strategy, running a set of events across the city, hiring new staff. It was a very busy period.
So as you can see, I think that it's a really good tool for candidates to practice and record themselves. And the tone analysis is very interesting. It kind of analyzes the words you're using, whether you're coming across as analytical and confident. It doesn't tell you whether you're going to get the job, but it will tell you things like maybe how you will be perceived as. So we thought it would be really good to give that feedback as well using machine learning. So we got some really good customer feedback from this when we ran the focus groups. It's about the ability to practice in context, and that was the most important thing, and we got some really good feedback around that. We thought this was a really good idea and kept pursuing it. 80% of the users we surveyed were really happy with the app and usefulness of it. And also a lot of universities have career centers, and so students think that it's really important to build that as part of that career toolkit for university students. So that's just really great. So what are the learnings? There are a lot of learnings from this journey we had. I'm always an advocate for building a small set of features and then testing it really quickly. So build them really good quality, but a small set of features. And then you can test it and give it to users. The ability for someone to log in and test is really powerful. So that's why Amplify has that, drop-in UIs. You can really quickly build something that people can log in and test things out. So that's really powerful. So I wanted to build small sets of features, then we can test and then learn fast. So what are the good things about Amplify, and what are the bad things? What are the things about the users? How are the users using it? So all those things are really important for us to understand. An iteration. So build something small, test it out, iterate. That's really important. And another thing is make it really easy for developers. So if they have to build a lot of boilerplate code, things from scratch, it takes a lot of time. And because Amplify creates that Swift code for you for all the function calls, you can concentrate on building the application logic. So that's really powerful, I thought. Develop training for the stack you have. I had multiple developers come in and go, so it's really important to have that training, because then they can quickly onboard and start adding value. Get support from organizations that the product will be useful for. So we use a number of universities. So University of Technology has been helping us with getting feedback from users, as well as we ran a pilot with them, and they'll be a potential customer for us as well. So after we launched, we experimented with different sales models, and lessons learned from that is obviously B2B sales take a long time. Obviously, it's not a surprise, but so we have to allow for that time to build the relationship and go through a series of, validation for, especially when you're a startup. Now, number one thing I get is in the first meeting I get is around the security and privacy. So that's why things like row level security, having in Australian region, and understanding how all the infrastructure works and where your users' data is, how you segregated data is really important, so you can tell that story to any potential buyers. And that's typically like the first few questions I get asked, even to do a focus group or a pilot, which is really important. Also, B2C sales are tough too, unless it's a really cool game on the App Store. It's really challenging to make money from the App Store. But a lot of people do as well. More specific lessons I want to talk about, not specifically related to AWS, but related to just general app development. So iOS, Apple App Store approval is really key. So we decided when we first started developing, use limited number of third-party SDKs. So I said no third-party SDKs. So that's a blanket. It's not a blanket thing, but no third-party SDKs. And we have used a couple of extra ones just to help some of the simplify the coding, especially in the Android one build. But we try to limit the number of SDKs, and we followed Apple guidelines to the letter, and generally try to write really good quality code. So hopefully that'll help you with the App Store approval. So for us, in our case, we were approved in 48 hours. However, in the beginning, actually, there was maybe a little bit longer than that, because when I first published it, I didn't upload all the images required, the display images or the screenshots of the app, and we're missing a couple of them, so they just rejected it. So can you upload? The moment I uploaded screenshots, it got approved. So nothing wrong with the code or the way we build the app. So that was really, really good. And sometimes it could take weeks or months to get approved. So it's really important to follow those standards, build it really well. External testing can be really challenging. So unfortunately, for if you want to roll out an iOS app to testers before going to App Store, you have to use TestFlight, and TestFlight can be cumbersome. So if you want to give it to a user, they have to first download TestFlight, click a link, install TestFlight, and then go to TestFlight and install the application. So that's very challenging. So if you want to give it to users, it can be challenging. But what we did was we actually got focus groups together and help people help users install the app as well if they're having problems. So it's fast track the process and then get to the functionality of the app. So I know that could be challenging these times, but that's some of the things that you need to think about when you're deploying that app. Have the documentation or support or guided help to install the app, so they can concentrate on giving the feedback of the functionality of the app, because the app installation process will be streamlined through the App Store. I cannot stress this enough, understand how your databases work. I know it's like such a trivial thing, but understand from a very low level function, not low level, but like more advanced level functionality, how it works. Especially in this case, we are using DynamoDB around how the writes and the reads work. When we tested in a scenario, we were testing out how we can play with capacity units, whether you want to do auto scaling or things like that. We had issues. We had like 20 users hitting the API at the same time. We had performance issues, and we realized that the payload we're sending, which is pretty big for our app because we have a lot of text data, and the way we've structured the queries wasn't really friendly for DynamoDB. So just really need to understand and avoid any scan operations. Those who use DynamoDB would know what I mean, but just be aware of that. Once we understand the data, our own data, our data models, then we could customize things or adjust things to improve performance and save money. So because we have a lot of text data, there's a lot of queries being done around the text. So we decided to use Elasticsearch to do the read operation. So the way it works is when a user writes data onto the backend, it writes to DynamoDB, and there is a trigger that automatically writes to Elasticsearch. And then when you're doing a read, you read the data from Elasticsearch. So the reads are done through Elasticsearch, the writes are done to Dynamo, and DynamoDB and Elasticsearch are synced, which means that you pretty much have 2 copies of your data, and good for redundancy as well. So that helped us speed up the queries, especially the complicated queries we do. And the cool thing is Amplify can do this out of the box. So the moment you add at search keyword into your data model or any data model, the first one you add, it'll automatically provision Elasticsearch cluster and do all the plumbing for you. You don't even have to log into the cluster. I suggest you log in and check it out, what indices it created. And that was really important because we didn't have to worry about doing anything custom for that. But I do kind of encourage, it sets up one node cluster, so you might want to put multiple nodes for redundancy. So that was really a big lesson learned for us, and then but Amplify was able to provision that automatically for us. Understand S3 permissions. We had an issue for about a month that we were trying to troubleshoot around how S3 permissions work, and now Amplify does it out of the box, which is really great. So where's the user's private data, where's the shared data, and where is the data that's available to the public? There isn't a data available to the public from our end. If you're allowing unauthenticated users, that's where. So just really need to understand what the policies, IAM policies, are created. Amplify, when you create the Amplify package, it creates a CloudFormation stack. So when you push it, it executes that stack. And if it fails for any reason, and there are a number of instances that it could fail, if there's inconsistency, it'll actually automatically roll back. And also, if it's successful, you can look at certain things, or even look at what's failed and troubleshoot looking at the CloudFormation's information. So it's really, really helpful. The other thing is give front-end developers access to AppSync. So typically, it's if there's a issue with the query, they say, well, can you check the backend? It's always like okay, the front-end code's fine, just the backend. So by giving them secure access to the AppSync API, they can test the queries before they even write it. So that we found that was really useful because there's an issue. You just jump on the console, they can quickly test actually my query, the console query works, then I must be doing something wrong. We use GraphQL to do external API calls as well, which is really, really, really powerful feature that Amplify has. So which means you can put any HTTP call. Now, one of the really good things about this is we're abstracting that from the front end, and also the security credentials are embedded in the back end. So you don't have to put any API authentication credentials to the front end app. It's really, really good. For extra security, we use row level permissions. So even if that user account's compromised, if they hit the API, they only get access to that user's data. And this is or can be automatically again done through Amplify, just specifying a specific keyword in the data model. It's great for security as well, like having that story around security. So final thoughts. Amplify is a powerful tool to provision all the backend resources, as well as the front end code that's required and the configuration that's required to talk to the backend. Now, you really need to understand the Amplify CLI. So spend some time understanding the CLI, and also put some additional security measures in place so you don't accidentally delete stacks, which we have done. Just spend some time understanding, but it takes a lot of that plumbing and a lot of the, I suppose, the complicated things you need to do to connect services, take that away, and then does that automatically. And most important thing is when you want to do an update, it does the update to the relevant services automatically, so which is really great. So Amplify enables, so you write less code with Amplify, but again, understand the architecture, understand the infrastructure really well, so you can actually give the right values to configure Amplify. And my advice is build an MVP really, really quickly, put it in front of users, and then get the feedback and do version 1 and scale. Good luck. Thank you.